Hello, I'm Dr. Kimberly Stoner of the Entomology Department of the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station. My research for the last 10 years has been focused around many different aspects of bees and pollination. Pollination of pumpkins and squash, exposure of bees to pesticides, and the diversity of bees in Connecticut. As part of a large project to look at the value of ornamental plants to pollinators, I have been working with a team of researchers across the country to look at pollinator visitation to different ornamental plants. Part of this project is looking at whether the use of pesticides in the production and maintenance of ornamental plants puts pollinators at risk. And part of the project is to find out which ornamental plants provide a benefit to pollinators so that people selling plants can give an accurate measure to consumers when they market ornamentals as plants for pollinators. As part of this project, we found that some zinnias are very attractive to pollinators, but that there's tremendous variation in attractiveness among the many cultivated varieties of zinnias. So I have focused on looking at zinnias more closely last year and this year. Zinnias are among the most popular ornamental plants in the United States. They are annual plants in Connecticut. They don't survive the winter here. So people either grow them from seed or buy seedlings as bedding plants each year. They're popular because they're relatively easy to grow in many different environments, and they bloom vigorously through the entire summer and fall until frost, with little maintenance. They are not native to Connecticut. The ornamental species of zinnia that we have are native to Mexico. The first zinnias were brought to Europe in the 1700s, and many of the variations in color and form we have today were mutations found by European, Asian, and American plant breeders in the 1800s. The zinnias you see in this slide belong to two different species and an interspecies hybrid. And as you can see, the flower heads have many different shapes. Some of them are called pom-pom or button or dahlia flowered. There's a much larger range of colors than what you see here. We chose to limit the color range we're looking at to red, orange, and yellow. What we would normally call a zinnia flower is really a flower head, or technically a capitulum, made of many ray and disc flowers. The ray flowers are what look like petals, but each one is actually a separate female flower. If you look closely at the base of some of the rays in this picture, you can see a tiny stigma with two curved branches. The flowers around the center are called disc flowers. These have both male and female parts, and you can see a diagram of how the flowers develop on the right side of the slide. The stigma, the female part, pushes up through a cylinder of anthers, the male parts that bear pollen. The pollen is released onto the stigma, where the pollinators come in contact with it, and then later the stigma becomes receptive to pollen brought by the pollinators from other plants, from other zinnia plants. Most of the pollinators come looking for nectar, which they suck from the base of the flowers. You can see a variety of pollinators here visiting the central disc flowers: a bumblebee, two species of butterflies, a fly, a tiny bee, and a honeybee. In 2019, my crew of technicians and summer workers went out every week to look at 28 different cultivated varieties of zinnias, and they spent 2 minutes watching insects on 4 zinnia plants of each variety in 5 replicated blocks each week of the summer into the early fall. What you see here are the top 9 varieties ranked by the number of total insect visitors over those weekly samples. The number of visiting insects they counted ranged from 357 on Lilliput Yellow, as you see here, down to 62 on a variety called Swizzle Scarlet and Yellow. So as we expected, we had a huge difference among the 28 varieties. There was also a wide range of numbers of bumblebees, from 159 bumblebees, again for Lilliput Yellow, as you see here, down to 6 bumblebees for Zahari Double Yellow, and from 97 honeybees for Zowie Yellow Flame, which is the third line down on this list, down to 3 for Profusion Yellow. Lilliput Yellow, which had the most total visitors and the most bumblebees, also did well in attracting other visitors like butterflies. This is a very old variety developed in France around 1900, and the seed is very inexpensive compared to the newer varieties, but it's hard to find. We got it from Eden Seeds, which carries many of the older Zinnia varieties. But bees and butterflies don't always prefer the same flowers. These two varieties that you see here, Profusion Yellow and Zahara Sunburst, had very few bees but had the most butterflies. These two varieties have a few traits in common. They both came from a cross between two different species of zinnias, and they both have simple single flowers. We will look again this year to see if these continue to be the varieties that are most visited by butterflies. Another old variety, Old Mexico, which comes from a different species from most of our zinnias, and which won the All-American Flower Award in 1962, has a lot of variation in color and shape of the flower heads, and also had a lot of diversity of visitors, including longhorn bees, tiny sweat bees, and hoverflies, as well as honeybees, bumblebees, and butterflies. So we looked at a number of factors that might affect the number of insect visitors, and some obvious ones are to look at the number of flower heads over time, and also the number of flower heads that had open disc flowers over time, and also another characteristic which is called the doubling of flowers. You might be interested in the varieties with the most flower heads for other reasons. Those are going to be the ones that are going to be the most ornamental for the longest amount of time. And as we saw earlier, insects mostly are visiting the disc flowers around the center of the flower head. So the number of flower heads with open disc flowers might be a factor in attracting insects. And several other researchers looking at flower species have said that the doubling of flowers, which is converting some of the disc flowers into ray flowers, might reduce the amount of nectar available or make it harder for insects to reach the nectar. So we looked at that too. You can see that Old Mexico had the most flower heads over time, and also the most open disc flowers over time. Some of these varieties with a lot of flower heads and a lot of open disc flowers also attracted a lot of insect visitors. As we have seen, Old Mexico attracted diverse visitors. Zahara Sunburst and Profusion Yellow, which are further down this list, attracted a lot of butterflies. And Lilliput Yellow, a little bit further down, attracted a lot of bees. But some of them did not attract many visitors, including Precision Double Yellow. The reason for the low attraction of Profusion Double Yellow to butterflies might be an effect of doubling. So doubling, as I said, means that some of the disc flowers are converted to ray flowers. And this is considered more ornamental, but it also make the flowers less attractive and rewarding to insects. Insects, especially butterflies, may not like this change. You can see that even though Profusion Double Yellow had more total flower heads in this head-to-head comparison, Profusion Yellow, the single flower head, had more flower heads with more open disc flowers, more total insect visitors, and many more total butterfly visitors. We are continuing this project this year, focusing on 16 varieties that had the most flowers and looking at some of the flower characteristics in more details. I would like to thank the seasonal workers from 2019 who collected so much information about these zinnias last year. Ben Gluck and Annie Bolduck have come back and are working on this project again this year. If you are interested in pollinators, especially bees, I would encourage you to visit the Pollinator information page on the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station website. There is information there about many different projects about bees that you can find there. Thank you for your attention.